Chapter 11, Transport in Plants. Have you ever wondered how water reaches the top of tall trees, or for that matter, how and why substances move from one cell to other? Whether all substances move in a similar way, in the same direction, and whether metabolic energy is required for moving substances. Plants need to move molecules over very long distances, much more than animals do. They also do not have a circulatory system in place. Water taken up by the roots has to reach all parts of the plant up to the very tip of a growing stem. The photosynthetes or food synthesized by the leaves have also to be moved to all parts including the root tip embedded deep inside the soil. Movement across short distances, say within the cell, across the membrane or from cell to cell within the tissue has also to take place. To understand some of the transport processes that takes place in plants, one would have to recollect one's basic knowledge about the structure of the cell and the anatomy of the plant body. We also need to revisit our understanding of diffusion besides gaining some knowledge about chemical potentials and ions. When we talk of the movement of substances, we need first to define what kind of movement we are talking about and also what substances we are looking at. In a flowering plant, the substances that would need to be transported are water, mineral, nutrients, organic nutrients, and plant growth regulators. Over small distances, substances move by diffusion and by cytoplasmic streaming, supplemented by active transport. Transport over longer distances proceeds through the vascular system, the xylem, and the phloem, and is called translocation. An important aspect that need to be considered is the direction of transport. In the rooted plants, transport in xylem of water and minerals is essentially unidirectional, from roots to the stem. Organic and mineral nutrients, however, undergo multidirectional transport. Organic compounds synthesized in the photosynthetic leaves are exported to all other parts of a plant, including storage organs. From the storage organs, they are later re exported. The mineral nutrients are taken up by the roots and transported upwards in the stem, leaves, and the growing regions. When any plant part undergoes senescence, nutrients may be withdrawn from such regions and moved to the growing parts. Hormones or plant growth regulators and other chemical signals are also transported through, though in very small amounts, sometimes in a strictly polarized or unidirectional manner from where they are synthesized to other parts. Hence, in flowering plant there is a complex traffic of compounds but probably very orderly, moving in different directions, each organ receiving some substances and giving out some others. 11.1 Means of transport. 11.1.1 Diffusion. Movement by diffusion is passive and may be from one part of the cell to the other or from cell to cell over very short distances, say from inner cellular spaces to the leaves to the outside. No energy expenditure takes place. In diffusion, molecules move in a random fashion, the net result being substances move from region of high concentration to region of lower concentration. Diffusion is a slow process and is not dependent on the living system. Diffusion is obvious in gases and liquids, but diffusion in solids is more likely rather than of solids. Diffusion is very important to plants since it is the only means of gaseous movement within the plant body. Diffusion rates are affected by the gradient of concentration, the permeability of the membrane separating them, temperature and pressure. 11.1.2 Facilitated diffusion. As pointed out earlier, a gradient must already be present for diffusion to occur. The diffusion rate depends on the size of substances. Obviously, smaller substances diffuse faster. The diffusion of any substance across a membrane also depends on its solubility in lipids, the major constituent of the membrane. Substances soluble in lipid diffuses through the membrane faster. Substances that have a hydrophilic moiety find it difficult to pass through the membrane. Their movement has to be facilitated. Membrane protein provides site at which such molecule cross the membrane. They do not set up a concentration gradient. A concentration gradient must already be present for a molecule to diffuse even if facilitated by the proteins. This is called This process is called facilitated diffusion. In facilitated diffusion, special protein help move substances across membrane without expenditure of ATP energy. Facilitated diffusion cannot cause net transport of molecules from low to the higher concentration. This would require input of energy. Transport rate reaches a maximum when all the protein transporters are being used. Saturation. Facilitated diffusion is very specific. It allows cell to select substances for uptake. It is sensitive to inhibitors which react with protein side chains. The protein form channels in the membrane for molecules to pass through. Some channels are always open, other can be controlled. Some are large, allowing a variety of molecules to cross. The porins are protein that form large pores in the outer membrane of the plastids, mitochondria, and some bacteria, allowing molecule up to a size of small protein to pass through. Figure 11.1 show an extracellular molecule bound to the transport protein. The transport protein then rotates and releases the molecule inside the cell. Example: water channels made up of 8 different types of aquaporins. 11.1.2.1 Passive sympaths and antipodes. Some carriers or transport proteins allow diffusion only if two types of molecules move together. In a sympod, both molecules cross the membrane in the same direction. In an antipode, they move in opposite direction. Figure 11.2. When a molecule moves across a membrane independent of the other molecule, the process is called unipode. 11.1.3 Active transport. Active transport uses energy to transport and pump molecule against a concentration gradient. Active transport is carried out by specific membrane protein. Hence, different protein in a membrane play a major role in both active as well as passive transport. Pumps are proteins. They use energy to carry substances across the cell membrane. These pumps can transport substances from a low concentration to a high concentration. Uphill transport. Transport rate reaches a maximum when all the protein transporters are being used or are saturated. Like enzymes, the carrier protein is very specific in what it carries across the membrane. These proteins are sensitive to inhibitors that react with protein side chains. 11.1.4 Comparison of different transport processes. Table 11.1 gives a comparison of different transport mechanisms. Protein is a membrane in the membrane are responsible for facilitated diffusion and active transport, and hence show common characteristic of being highly selective. They are liable to saturate, respond to inhibitors, and are under hormonal regulation. But diffusion, whether facilitated or not, takes place only along a gradient and do not use energy. Table 11.1 Comparison of different transport mechanism. Property: simple diffusion, facilitated diffusion, active transport. Property: requires special membrane protein. In simple diffusion, no requirement. In facilitated and active transport, requirement of special protein is must. Highly selective. Simple diffusion, no. Facilitated and active transport, yes. Transport saturates. Simple diffusion, no. Facilitated and active transport, yes. Uphill transport. Facilitated diffusion and simple diffusion, no. In active transport, yes. Simple diffusion and facilitated diffusion require ATP, no. In active transport, yes. 11.2 Plant water relations. Water is essential for all physiological activities of a plant and play a very important role in all living organisms. It provides the medium in which the most substances are dissolved. The protoplasm of the cell is nothing but water in which different molecules are dissolved and several particles suspended. A watermelon has over 92% water. Most herbaceous plants have only about 10 to 15% of its fresh water as dry matter. Of course, distribution of water within a plant varies. Woody parts have relatively very little water, while soft parts mostly contain water. A seed may appear dry, but it still has water. Otherwise, it would not be alive and respiring. Terrestrial plants take up huge amount of water daily, but most of it is lost to the air through evaporation from the leaves, that is transpiration. A mature corn plant absorbs almost 3 liters of water a day, while a mustard plant absorbs water equal to its own weight in about 5 hours. Because of this high demand for water, it is not surprising that water is often the limiting factor for plant growth and productivity in both agriculture and natural environments. 11.2.1 Water potential. To comprehend plant water relation and understanding of certain standard terms is necessary. Water potential (ZW) is a concept fundamental to understanding water movements. Solute potential (Xi(S) and pressure potential (Xi(P) are two main components that determine water potential. Water molecule possess kinetic energy. In liquid and gaseous form, they are in random motion that is both rapid and constant. The greater the concentration of water in a system, the greater is its kinetic energy or water potential. Hence, it is obvious that pure water will have the greatest water potential. If two systems containing water are in contact, random movement of water molecule will result in net movement of water molecule from the system with higher energy to the one with lower energy. Thus, water will move from the system containing water at higher water potential to the one having lower water potential. This process of movement of substances down a gradient of free energy is called diffusion. Water potential is denoted by a Greek symbol xi or psi and is expressed in pressure units such as pascals (Pa). By convention, the water potential of pure water at standard temperature, which is not under any pressure, is taken to be zero. If some solute is dissolved in pure water, the solution has fewer free water molecule and the concentration free energy of water decreases, reducing its water potential. Hence, all solutions have a lower water potential than pure water. The magnitude of this lowering due to dissolution of solute is called solute potential or Xi(S). Xi(S) is always negative. The more the solute molecule, the more negative is the Xi(S). For a solution at atmospheric pressure, water potential Xi(W) is equal to solute potential Xi(S). If a pressure greater than atmospheric pressure is applied to the pure water or a solution, its water potential increases. It is equivalent to pumping water from one place to another. Can you think of any system in our body where pressure is built up? Pressure can build up in a plant system when water enters a plant cell due to diffusion causing a pressure build up against the cell wall. It makes the cell turgid. See section 11.2.2. This increases the pressure potential. Pressure potential is usually positive, though in plants negative potential or tension of water in the water column in the xylem plays a major role in in water transport upper stem. Pressure potential is denoted as Xi(P). Water potential of the cell is affected by both solute and pressure potential. The relationship between them is as follows. Xi(W) is equal to Xi(S) plus Xi(P). 11.2.2 Osmosis. The plant cell is surrounded by the cell membrane and a cell wall. The cell wall is freely permeable to water and substances in solution, hence it is not the barrier to movement. In plants, the cell usually contain a large central vacuole whose content the vacuolar sap contributes to the solute potential of a cell. In plant cell, the cell membrane and the membrane of a vacuole, the tonoplast, together are important determinants of the movement of molecules in or out of the cell. Osmosis is the term used to refer specifically to the diffusion of water across a differentially or selectively permeable membrane. Osmosis occurs spontaneously in response to a driving force. The net direction and the rate of osmosis depend on the both pressure gradient and the concentration gradient. Water will move from its region of higher chemical potential or concentration to its region of lower chemical potential until equilibrium is reached. At equilibrium, the two chambers should have nearly the same water potential. You may have made a potato osmometer in your earlier classes in school. If the potato tuber is placed in water, the water enters the cavity in the potato tuber containing a concentrated solution of sugar due to osmosis. Study figure 11.3, in which the two chambers A and B containing solution are separated by a semi-permeable membrane. A. Solution of which chamber will have has the lower water potential. B. Solution of which chamber has a lower solute potential. C. In which direction will osmosis occur? D. Which solution has a higher solute potential? E. At equilibrium, which chamber have lower water potential? F. If one chamber has a Xi of minus 2000 kilopascal and other has minus 1000 kilopascal, which is the chamber that has the higher Xi? G. What will be the direction of movement of water when when two solution with Xi W is equal to 2.2 megapascal and Xi W is zero point 0.1 megapascal are separated by selectively permeable membrane. Let us discuss another experiment where a solution of sucrose and water taken in a funnel is separated from pure water in a beaker by a selectively permeable membrane. Figure 11.4. You can get this kind of membrane in an egg. Remove the yolk and albumin through a small hole at one end of the egg and place the shell in dilute solution of hydrochloric acid for a few hours. The egg shall dissolve, leaving the membrane intact. Water will move into the funnel, resulting in rise in level of solution in the funnel. This will continue till the equilibrium is reached. In case sucrose does not diffuse out through the membrane, will this equilibrium be ever reached? External pressure can be applied from the upper part of the funnel such that no water diffuse into the funnel through the membrane. This pressure required to prevent water from diffusing is in fact the osmotic pressure, and this is the function of the solute concentration. More the solute concentration, greater will be the pressure required to prevent water from diffusing in. Numerically, osmotic pressure is equivalent to the osmotic potential, but the sign is opposite. Osmotic pressure is positive pressure applied while osmotic potential is negative. 11.2.3, Plasmolysis. The behavior of the plant cell or tissues with regards to water movement depend on the surrounding solution. If the external solution balances the osmotic pressure of the cytoplasm, it is said to be isotonic. If the external solution is more dilute, then the cytoplasm is called hypotonic, and if the external solution is more concentrated, it is hypertonic. Cells swell in hypotonic solution and shrink in hypertonic ones. Plasmolysis occur when water moves out of the cell and the cell membrane of a plant cell shrinks away from its cell wall. This occurs when the cell or tissue is placed in a solution that is hypertonic, has more solutes to the protoplasm. Water moves out is it is first lost from the cytoplasm and then from the vacuole. The water, when drawn out of the cell through diffusion into the extracellular outside cell fluid, causes the protoplast to shrink away from the walls. The cell is said to be plasmolysed. The movement of water occurs across the membrane, moving from an area of higher water potential, that is cell, to an area of lower water potential outside the cell. Figure 11.5. What occupies the space between the cell wall and the shrunken protoplasm in the plasmolysed cell? When the cell or tissue is placed in an isotonic solution, there is no net flow of water towards the inside or outside. If the external solution balances the osmotic pressure of the cytoplasm, it is said to be isotonic. When water flows into the cell and out of the cell and are in equilibrium, the cells are said to be flaccid. The process of plasmolysis is usually reversible when the cells are placed in hypotonic solution, higher water potential or dilute solution as compared to the cytoplasm. Water diffuses into the cell, causing the cytoplasm to build up the pressure against the wall. This is called turgor pressure. The pressure exerted by the protoplasm due to the entry of water against the rigid walls is called the pressure potential Xi P. Because of the rigidity of the cell wall, the cell do not rupture. This Turgor pressure is ultimately responsible for enlargement and extension, growth of cells. What would be the xi-p of a flaccid cell? Which organism other than plant possess cell wall? 11.2.4 Imbibition. Imbibition is a special type of diffusion when water is absorbed by solid colloids, causing them to increase in volume. The classical examples of imbibition are absorption of water by seeds and dry wood. The pressure that is produced by the swelling of wood has been used by prehistoric man to split rocks and boulders. If it were not for the pressure due to imbibition, seedlings would not have been able to emerge out of the soil into the open. They probably would not have been able to establish. Imbibition is also diffusion since water movement is along a concentration gradient. The seeds and other such material have almost no water, hence they absorb water easily. Water potential gradient between the absorbent and the liquid imbibed is essential for imbibition. In addition, for any substance to imbibe any liquid, affinity between the absorbent and the liquid is also a prerequisite. 11.3 Long distance transport of water. At some earlier stages, you might have carried out an experiment where you had placed a twig bearing white flowers in colored water and had watched it turning color. On examining the cut end of a twig after a few hours, you had noted the region through which the colored water moved. That experiment very easily demonstrated that the path of water movement is through the vascular bundles, more specifically the xylem. Now, we have to go further and try and understand the mechanism of movement of water and other substances up a plant. Long distance transport of substances within a plant cannot be by diffusion alone. Diffusion is a slow process. It can account for only short distance movement of molecules. For example, the movement of a molecule across a typical plant cell about 50 micrometer takes approximately 2.5 seconds. At this rate, can you calculate how many years it would take for the movement of a molecule over a distance of 1 meter within a plant by diffusion alone? In large and complex organisms, often substances have to be moved to a long distances. Sometimes the site of production and absorption, the site of storage are too far from each other. Diffusion or active transport would not suffice. Special long distance transport systems become necessary so as to move substances across long distances and at a much faster rate. Water and minerals and food are generally moved by a mass or bulk flow system. Mass flow is the movement of substances in a bulk or en masse from one point to another as a result of pressure differences between the 2 points. It is a characteristic of mass flow that substances, whether in solution or in suspension, are swept along at a same pace as in a flowing river. This is unlike diffusion where different substances move independently depending on their concentration gradient. Bulk flow can be achieved either through a positive hydrostatic pressure gradient, example a garden hose, or a negative hydrostatic pressure gradient, example suction through a straw. The bulk movement of substance through the conducting or vascular tissue of plant is called translocation. Do you remember studying a cross section of roots, stems and leaves of higher plant and studying the vascular system? The higher plant have highly specialized vascular tissues, xylem and phloem. Xylem is associated with translocation of mainly water, mineral salts, some organic nitrogen and hormones from roots to the aerial parts of a plant. The phloem translocates a variety of organic and inorganic solutes mainly from the leaves to other parts of the plant. 11.3.1 How do plant absorb water? We know that the roots absorb most of the water that goes into plant. Obviously, that is why we apply water to the soil and not on the leaves. The responsibility of absorption of water and minerals is more specifically the function of the roots that are present in millions at the tip of a roots. Root hairs are thin, walled, cylinder extensions of the root epidermal cells that greatly increase the surface area for absorption. Water is absorbed along with mineral solutes by the root hairs purely by diffusion. Once water is absorbed by the root hairs, it can move deeper into root layers by two distinct pathways: apoplast pathway, symplast pathway. The apoplast is the system of adjacent water cells that is continuous throughout the plant except at the Casparian strips of the endodermis in the root. Figure 11.6. The apoplastic movement of water occur exclusively through the intercellular spaces and the walls of the cells. Movement through the apoplast does not involve crossing the cell membrane. This movement is dependent on the gradient. The apoplast does not provide any barrier to water movement, and water movement is through mass flow. As water evaporates into the intercellular spaces or the atmosphere, tension develops in a continuous stream of water in apoplast. Hence, mass flow of water occurs due to the adhesive and cohesive property of water. The symplastic movement is the system of interconnected protoplast. Neighboring cells are connected through cytoplasmic strands that extend through plasmodesmata. During symplastic movement, the water travels through the cell. Their cytoplasm intercellular movement is through the plasmodesmata. Water has to enter the cell through the cell membrane, hence the movement is relatively slower. Movement again is again a down a potential gradient. Moment is again down a potential gradient. Symplastic moment may be aided by cytoplasmic streaming. You may have observed cytoplasmic streaming in a cells of the hydrilla leaf. The movement of chloroplast due to the streaming is easily visible. Most of the water flow in the root occur via the apoplast since the cortical cells are loosely packed and hence offer no resistance to water movement. However, the inner boundary of the cortex, the endodermis, is impervious to water because of a band of suberized matrix called the Casparian strip. Water movement Water molecules are unable to penetrate the layer, so they are directed to the wall region that are not suberized in the cell proper through the membrane. The water then move through the symplast and again cross a membrane to reach the cell of a xylem. The movement of water though in root layers is ultimately symplastic in the endodermis. This is the only way of water and other solutes can enter the vascular cylinder. Once inside the xylem, water is again free to move between the cells as well as through them. In young roots, water enter directly into the xylem vessels and or tracheids. These are not living conduits and so are parts of the apoplast. The path of water and mineral ions into the root vascular system is summarized in figure 11.7. Some plants have additional structures associated with them that help in water and mineral absorption. A mycorrhiza is a symbiotic association of a fungus with a root. The fungal filaments form a network around the young root of or they penetrate the root cells. The hyphae have a very large surface area that absorb mineral ions and water from the soil from a much larger volume of soil that perhaps a root cannot do. The fungus provides minerals and water to the roots. In turn, the root provides sugars and nitrogen containing compounds to the mycorrhizae. Some plants have an obligate association with the mycorrhizae. For example, pinus seed cannot germinate and establish without the presence of mycorrhizae. 11.3.2 Water movement up a plant. We looked at how plants absorb water from the soil and move it into the vascular tissue. We now have to try and understand how this water is transported to various parts of a plant. Is the water movement active or is still passive? Since the water has to be moved up a stem against the gravity, what provides the energy for this? 11.3.2.1 Root pressure. At as various ions from the soil are actively transported into the vascular tissue or the of the roots, water flow its potential gradient and increases the pressure inside the xylem. This positive pressure is called root pressure and can be responsible for pushing up water to small heights in the stem. How can we see that root pressure exists? Choose a small, soft-stemmed plant and on a day when there is a plenty of atmospheric moisture, cut the stem horizontally near the base with a sharp blade early in the morning. You will Soon see drops of solution ooze out of the cut stem. This comes out due to positive root pressure. If you fix a rubber tube to the cut stem as a sieve, you can actually collect and measure the rate of exudate and also determine the composition of exudates. Effect of root pressure is also observable at night and early morning when evaporation is low and excess of water collect in the form of droplets around a special opening of veins near the tip of grass blades and leaves of many herbaceous plants. Such water loss in its liquid phase is known as guttation. Root pressure can at best only provide a modest push in the overall process of water transport. They obviously do not play a major role in water movement of tall trees. The greatest contribution of root pressure may be to re-establish the continuous chain of water molecule in the xylem which often break under the enormous tension created by transpiration. Root pressure does not account for the majority of water transport. Most plants meet their need by transpiratory pull. 11.3.2.2 Transpiration pull. Despite the absence of a heart or a circulatory system in plants, the upward flow of water through the xylem in plants can achieve fairly high rates up to 15 meters per hour. How is this movement accomplished? A long standing question is whether water is pushed or pulled through the plants. Most researchers agree that water is mainly pulled through the plant and that the driving force for this process is transpiration from the leaves. This is referred to as cohesion tension transpiration pull model of water transport. But what generates this transpirational pull? Water is transient in plants. Less than 1% of water reaching the leaves is used in photosynthesis and plant growth. Most of it is lost through the stomata in the leaves. This water loss is known as transpiration. You have studied transpiration in an earlier class by enclosing a healthy plant in polythene bag and observing the droplets of water formed inside the bag. You could also study water loss from a leaf using cobalt chloride paper, which turns color on absorbing water. 11.4 Transpiration. Transpiration is an evaporative loss of water by plants. It occurs mainly through stomata. Besides the loss of water molecule and transpiration, exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide in the leaves also occur through these stomata. Normally, stomata are open in the daytime and closed during the night. The immediate cause of the opening or closing of stomata is the change in turgidity of the guard cell. The wall of the inner wall of each guard cell towards the pore or stomatal aperture is thick and elastic. When turgidity increases within the two guard cells flanking each stomatal aperture or pores, the thin outer wall bulges out and forces the inner walls into a crescent shape. The opening of stomata the opening of stoma is also aided due to the orientation of microfibrils in the cell wall of a guard cells. Cellulose microfibrils are oriented radially rather than longitudinally, making it easier for the stoma to open. When the guard cells lose turgor due to water loss or water stress, the elastic inner wall regain their original shape. The guard cell become flaccid and the stoma closes. Usually the lower surface of a dorsiventral, often dicotyledonous leaf has a greater number of stoma, while in an isobilateral, often monocotyledonous leaf, they are about equal on both surfaces. Transpiration is affected by several external factors: temperature, light, humidity, wind speed. Plant factors that affect transpiration include number and distribution of stoma, percent of open stoma, water status of the plant, canopy structure, etc. The transpiration driven ascent of xylem sap depends mainly on the flowing physical properties of water. Cohesion, mutual attraction between water molecules. Adhesion, attraction of water molecules to polar surfaces such as the surface of tertiary elements. Surface tension, water molecules are attracted to each other in the liquid phase more than the water in a gas phase. These properties give water high tensile strength, that is an ability to resist a pulling force, and high capillarity, that is the ability to rise in a thin tubes. In plant, capillarity is added by the small diameter of a trachea elements, the tracheids and vessel elements. The process of photosynthesis require water. The system of xylem vessel from the roots to the leaf vein can supply the needed water. But what force does a plant use to move water molecules into a leaf parenchyma cells where they are needed? As water evaporates, though the stoma, since the thin film of water over the cell is continuous, it results in pulling of water molecule by molecule into the leaves from the xylem. Also, because of lower concentration of water vapor in the atmosphere as compared to the substomatal cavity and intercellular spaces, water diffuses into the surrounding air. This creates a pull. Figure 11.9. Measurements reveal that the force generated by transpiration can create pressure sufficient to lift a xylem-sized column of water over 130 meters high. 11.4.1 Transpiration and photosynthesis a compromise. Transpiration has more than one purpose. It creates transpiration pull for absorption and transport of plants, supplies water for photosynthesis, transports minerals from the soil to all parts of the plant, cools leaf surfaces sometimes 10 to 15 degrees by evaporative cooling, maintains the shape and structure of a plant by keeping cell turgid. An actively photosynthesizing plant has an insatiable need for water. Photosynthesis is limited by available water, which can be swiftly depleted by transpiration. The humidity of rainforests is largely due to this vast cycling of water from roots to leaf to atmosphere and back to the soil. The evolution of a C4 photosynthetic system is probably one of the strategy for maximizing the availability of CO2 while minimizing water loss. C4 plant are twice as efficient as C3 plant in terms of fixing carbon dioxide, making sugars. However, a C4 plant loses only half as much water as a C3 plant for the same amount of CO2 fixed. 11.5 Uptake and transport of mineral nutrients. Plants obtain their carbon and most of their oxygen from CO2 in the atmosphere. However, their remaining nutritional requirements are obtained from water and minerals in the soil. 11.5.1 Uptake of mineral ions. Unlike water, all mineral cannot be passively absorbed by the roots. Two factors account for this. First, minerals are present in the soil as charged particles, ions, which cannot move across the cell membrane. And second, the concentration of minerals in the soil is usually lower than the concentration of minerals in the roots. Therefore, most minerals must enter the roots by active absorption into the cytoplasm of epidermal cells. This needs energy in the form of ATP. The active uptake of ions is partly responsible for the water potential gradient in roots and therefore for the uptake of water by osmosis. Some ions also move into the epidermal cells passively. Ions are absorbed from the soil by both passive and active transport. Specific protein in the membrane of a root hair cells actively pump iron from the soil into the cytoplasm of the epidermal cells. Like all cells, the endodermal cells have many transport proteins embedded in their plasma membrane. They let some solute cross the membrane but not others. Transport protein of endodermal cells are control points where a plant adjusts the quality and type of solutes that reach the xylem. Note that the root endodermis, because of the layer of suberin, has the ability to actively transport ions in one direction only. 11.5.2 Translocation of mineral ions. After the ions have reached xylem through active or passive uptake or a combination of the two, their further transport up the stem to all parts of a plant is through the transpiration stream. The chief sinks of the mineral elements are the growing region of the plant, such as the apical and lateral meristems, young leaves, developing flowers, fruits, and seeds in the storage organs. Unloading of mineral iron occurs at a fine vein endings through diffusion and active uptake by these cells. Mineral iron are frequently remobilized, particularly from older senescence parts. Older dying leaves export much of their mineral content to younger leaves. Similarly, before leaf fall in deciduous plant, minerals are removed to other parts. Elements most readily mobilized are phosphorus, sulfur, nitrogen, potassium. Some elements that are structural component like calcium are not remobilized. An analysis of a xylem exudate show that though some of the nitrogen travel as inorganic ions, much of it is carried in an organic form as amino acid and related compounds. Similarly, small amount of phosphorus and sulfur are carried as organic compounds. In addition, small amount of exchange of material takes place between xylem and phloem. Hence, it is not that we can clearly make a distinction and say categorically that xylem transport only inorganic nutrients while phloem transport only organic nutrients as we traditionally believed. 11.6 Phloem transport. Flow from source to sink. Food, primarily sucrose, is transported by the vascular tissue phloem from a source to a sink. Usually, the source is understood to be a part of a plant which synthesizes the food, that is, the leaf, and sink, the part that need or store the food. But the source and sink may be reversed depending on the season or the plant's need. Sugar stored in the roots may be mobilized to become a source of food in the earlier spring when the bud of a tree act as a sink. They need energy for growth and development of a photosynthetic apparatus. Since the source-sink relationship is variable, the direction of movement in phloem can be upward or downward, that is, bidirectional. This contrasts with that of xylem where the movement is always unidirectional, that is, upwards. Hence, unlike one-way flow of water in transpiration, food in phloem sap can be transported in any required direction so long as there is a source of sugar and a sink able to use, store, or remove the sugar. Phloem sap is mainly water and sucrose, but other sugars, hormones, and amino acids are also transported and translocated through phloem. 11.6.1 The pressure flow or mass flow hypothesis. The accepted mechanism used for the translocation of sugar from source to sink is called the pressure flow hypothesis. See figure 11.10. As glucose is prepared at the source by photosynthesis, it is converted to sucrose or disaccharide. The sugar is then moved in the form of sucrose into the companion cells and then into the living phloem sieve tube cells by the active transport. This process of loading at the source produces a hypertonic condition in the phloem. Water in the adjacent xylem moves into the phloem by osmosis. As osmotic pressure builds up, the phloem sap will move to areas of lower pressure. At the sink, osmotic pressure must be reduced. Against Again, active transport is necessary to move the sucrose out of the phloem sap into the cell which will use the sugar, converting it into energy, starch, or cellulose. As sugar are moved, the osmotic pressure decreases and water moves out of the phloem. To summarize, the movement of sugars in the phloem begins at the source where sugars are loaded, actively transported into the sieve tubes. Loading of the phloem set up a water potential gradient that facilitates the mass movement in the phloem. Phloem tissue is composed of sieve tube cells which form long columns with holes in their end walls called sieve plates. Cytoplasmic strands pass through the holes in the sieve plates, so forming continuous filaments. As hydrostatic pressure in a sieve tube of phloem increases, pressure flow begins, and the sap moves through the phloem. Meanwhile, at the sink, incoming sugars are actively transported out of the phloem and removed as complex carbohydrates. The loss of solute produces a high water potential in the xylem and water passes out, returning eventually to xylem. A simple experiment called girdling was used to identify the tissue through which food is transported. On the trunk of a tree, a ring of bark up to the depth of phloem layer can be carefully removed. In the absence of downward movement of food, the portion of a bark above the ring on the stem becomes swollen after a few weeks. This simple experiment showed that phloem is the tissue responsible for translocation of food, and that transport takes place in one direction, that is towards the root. This experiment can be performed by you easily.